Hi there, welcome to this build of a 60-inch wingspan Avanti patterns plane. Now this isn't a detailed build series, it's the third in a series of kind of blogs really, just outlining the build, showing what I'm doing and specifically showing what I'm doing that's different to when I built this plane a few years ago, which I ended up giving to a really good friend. So we've got to the point now with this build where we've done really all of the balsa construction. We've got the wings hanging up here, we've got the fuselage done, and we've got the tail assembly in bits here. And we're going to start covering this. Now I'm going to be using two colours, and essentially I'm going to be using the same colours and the same pattern colour scheme as I did with the first Avanti build. But I'm going to be using Aura cover this time. Before I used Latex from the World Models, which was okay, but it wasn't a patch on this stuff. So I've got the cream and I've got the Corsair blue. And you can see from this here, which is my first build, the colour scheme that I'm going to be using. And I really like this. And that kind of outline or is the same as in the original build article that came out in, I think it was 1974. So what we're going to be doing first is I'm going to be covering the elements of the tail assembly. So the tailplane, the fin, rudder and the elevator. And I'm doing these all separately. And once I've got them covered and I'm happy with them, I'm going to be actually gluing them together, and I think doing it that way you get a much nicer finish than gluing them and then trying to do it, which I did on my first Avanti build. I will also, once I've got them covered, I've put the hinges in, I've slotted the hinges so that they fit in and I know where the slots are and how it's going to work. You can see there we've got a hinge in. But I'm not going to actually glue them until they're covered because it would just make covering really difficult. So I'm going to get on, I think, and start to do the tail assembly, and then we'll come back and have a look and see how that's gone. But I think after that we're then going to move to the wings. And I think once we've got the wings done, we're then going to mock up the whole plane without the fuselage covered, because I want to mock it up with the wheels and the engine and everything to see where the CG is, so that it'll inform us where to put the servos that are going to go in the fuselage, the battery and the receiver, because obviously we can move those forward or backwards so that we arrive at this sweet spot, oh, you can't see it, sweet spot on the plans for the specified CG. Because I haven't filled this in yet, and I don't want to do that covering until I've got all that radio gear installed. So anyway, I'm going to get on now and start to get this covered. As I said, it's not a detailed build series, I'm just giving an overview, like a build blog really, of the work that's going on. Well, I've really been cracking on with this covering, and it is so exciting to see it start to get some colour, and I do really love these colours together. So here we've got the tailplane and the elevator. The elevator's just pushed on at the moment, it's not glued, I still need to do that. I just wanted to see what it looked like. And we've also done the fin and the rudder. And just a suggestion here is, when we do the rudder, if I just come around, when we do the rudder we need to do this little piece here, which is cut out to allow it to go over the joining bar on the elevators. And I've always struggled with that, trying to get my iron into it. And let me just take this off. Try and get my iron in and to do a neat job. Well, this time I actually used my small blow lamp and just a drill, it's about a 1/4 inch drill, heated it up, and I just used that as an iron just to make sure that that was really nice and round and secure, and it's made a lovely job. So that's just a suggestion there. But as I said, I've been cracking on with this, and I'm so excited to be seeing the colour getting on it now, and I can almost see the end in sight. I'm just trying to put this together again, and anyway, I can't without spending a little bit more time. So what I've done now, so I've got this tail assembly covered, and I'm now going to start covering the wings. I've done a little bit of preparation on the underside. I've done this central section here, which is probably the most difficult bit of the whole wing, just due to the different curves. I've done the inside edges here of the aileron bays, so that when we come to do this, we can just put a cut line and fold it down, and we haven't got any bare balsas showing. And similarly on the where the hatches go, or the covers go, for the aileron servos. So I'm going to get my covering film cut up now, and I'm going to do this in two pieces, one either side. It'd be crazy to try and do the whole thing at once, and just a nice seam down the middle. So I'll get this cut up and we'll get this wing covered. Well, I've now got the wing and the tail assembly and all the bits like the ailerons covered, and it's a really big relief. And I think the further you go on in covering the wing, the more you've got kind of tied into it really, and the less you want to make a mistake. But it's come out absolutely lovely. We've got really nice wing tips. It's the Corsair blue underneath, and we've got the Corsair blue and the cream on top, and I really like this design. And I think I've said this already, but the actual pattern itself I've copied from the build article when this design came out, but I do love the colours as well. And it's surprising, this little pinstripe here, which I actually cut separately and put on the blue, really made a big difference to how this looked. It just made it stand out. It was quite well, yeah, it was interesting the difference it made. But I've got the servo plates done, I've got the servos back in, and of course the tail assembly. So now I think I'm not going to start covering the fuselage, as I think I've said. I'm going to completely mock this up and get it all together with everything that can't be moved, and see where the CG is, so that we can decide where we're going to put the servos essentially. So we'll come back and have a quick look at this once it's mocked up. It's really exciting now to see this really starting to take shape. Well, as you can see, I've got this all mocked up now, and this has been a really interesting exercise. Now I've got a kind of a medium-sized servo down on the tailplane there, which I'm going to put underneath the tailplane so you can't see it, and that's going to operate the elevator. Now I've got two servos here, one a bigger servo, kind of 30-gram servo, which is going to control the rudder and the steering wheel. I want a bigger servo for that, bigger gears, just because the nose wheel is going to take a little bit of vibration and knocking. Smaller servo for the throttle, again a 20-gram, I think these are about 3 kilos. They're an Emax servo. So I've got this laid out. I haven't got the receiver on there, there's very little weight to that, and the switch, but again that can be back here. Now I've had to put the battery here to get it to balance on the underside of the fuselage, and it's just popped up in there. Now I've had to do that to get it to balance. Now the issue here, this is a very nose heavy plane, and to be honest, the first one I built was nose heavy, exactly the same as this. If you look at it, it's got a long nose, and I mean the nose to the CG is probably a third of the distance from the CG to the tip of the tail. So the engine is quite a way forward, and this Irvine 61 is, I think if I remember correctly, it's about 100 grams heavier than the Enya that was specified on the plans, again a 60 size. So we've got a good chunk of engine shoehorned in here. But now this does roughly balance out on my fingers. I mean, we'll have to balance it better when we get the covering on. Actually, there's also some balsa that will need to go on. If we put that there, that will just signify the balsa, or that we'll put on the underside of the tail. And there, that's actually a little bit tail heavy now. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get the control elements in, the servos, the switch, the receiver, and get them as far back in the fuselage as physically possible, really. There's limits on that for access, obviously, so, and that's going to be about here, I think, a little bit further back than that. And then what I'm going to do, and I'll get the servo in the tail, then what I'm going to do is mock this up again, and we'll have a much better idea of where the CG is falling and whether it's still nose heavy. And I'm going to work out roughly where the battery needs to go in the back of the fuselage. I'm going to make a hatch, and then I'm going to make a bit of a block of foam which fits quite snugly inside the fuselage, which I can put the battery in the middle of. The foam will reduce pressure points. It's not like the battery will just be sitting on a couple of bits of balsa. It'll be supported around the whole of the battery with the foam and in the fuselage. And that foam I can slide, hopefully this is the idea, I can slide it backwards or forwards to get that CG right on the sweet point. When I do this, I might even put on some of the balsa on the back of the fuselage, because the battery isn't going to end up here. There's no reason why we can't put the battery anywhere in this plane. At the end of the day, we've got to get some weight back. We can't reduce the weight in the front, so we need to get it back. So why not use the battery? It'd be crazy to put the battery up here and then put lead in the tail. So let's put this in the back and get this thing to balance without adding any weight. At the moment, it's about 2.5 kilos. So the specified weight on the plans is, I think it's 100 ounces, which is just over 2.8 kilos. So hopefully we'll come in below the build weight or on the suggested build weight. But I think this has been a hugely valuable exercise to get this CG sorted, so we know where the battery's going to be. And it'll be quite easy to make a hatch to go in the back here. I mean, there's still timber to be added back of the CG for holding the servos and holding the servo in here and the linkages, so it might be that we end up moving that battery a little bit further forward, but we'll see. And also, isn't it fantastic to get an idea of how this plane is going to look when it's finished? It's really nice, and I can get just one of the scrap canopies, just put that on, and we can see. I mean, I absolutely love the lines on this aeroplane and can't wait to get it finished and get it off to the airfield. But I think probably the best thing to do now is to draw this video to a close, and you know, to try not to make it too long. And then in the next video I'll be looking at, or we can see how I fitted the radio gear and how we're getting on with covering the fuselage. I think far better to split it up into smaller sections. I know originally I said I was going to do this in 2 videos, I think it was, and now it's what, 3, 4, maybe 5 videos. But hopefully you're enjoying it, and thanks very much for watching, and come back and see how we get on with this beautiful 60-inch Avanti patterns plane build.